Imagine finding out that something you do every single week in your own kitchen, something you think is practical and safe, is quietly creating conditions for one of the deadliest cancers in the body. Does that sound extreme? Unfortunately, it is not. Most of us are doing our best. We store leftovers, reheat food, and try to save money, especially in the United States, where food costs are rising. Reheating leftovers feels responsible, and in many ways, it is. But there's a deeper layer most people never hear about. Some foods, when reheated, can undergo chemical changes that may not be as harmless as we assume. This doesn't mean you need to fear your kitchen, but a few small adjustments could make a meaningful difference for long-term health. Your body is incredibly resilient, but it is also cumulative. What you do repeatedly over years matters far more than what you do once. Chronic diseases like pancreatic cancer often develop silently, with no early warning signs. By the time symptoms appear, the condition may already be advanced. That's why prevention matters so much. Not fear, not perfection, just awareness and smarter habits. When food is cooled, stored, and then heated again, several things can happen. Protective nutrients, like antioxidants, can degrade. Certain compounds formed during the first cooking can become more concentrated. New reactions can occur, especially if the food contains specific natural chemicals, like nitrates or unstable fats. Storage conditions may allow bacteria to alter the food's chemistry before reheating even begins. Now, this doesn't mean reheating food is inherently dangerous. The vast majority of leftovers are perfectly safe when handled correctly. But, and this is important, some foods are more sensitive to these changes than others. And that brings us to the first category. Food number 1, processed meats, especially when reheated. Let's start with something very common in American households: bacon, hot dogs, sausages, deli meats, ham. These foods are convenient, affordable, familiar. For many people, they're a staple, especially for quick breakfasts or lunches. But processed meats come with a unique characteristic. They often contain added nitrates and nitrites as preservatives. These compounds help maintain color and prevent bacterial growth. But under certain conditions, particularly heat, they can form substances known as nitrosamines. Nitrosamines have been studied extensively in the field of cancer research. Some have been associated with increased cancer risk when exposure is frequent and long-term. Now here's where reheating matters. When processed meats are cooked once, some of these reactions may already occur in small amounts. But when you reheat them, especially at high temperatures like frying or microwaving on high, you can increase the formation of these compounds. Think of it this way. You're not starting from zero. You're building on what's already there. Over time, repeated exposure, even in small amounts, can add up. And again, this is not about eliminating foods entirely. It's about understanding how to use them wisely. A practical approach. If you enjoy processed meats, try to cook them once and eat them fresh. Avoid reheating them repeatedly. Use lower heat when possible. Consider rotating in unprocessed protein sources, like fresh chicken, fish, beans, or eggs. You don't have to give them up, but you can change how often and how you use them. Food number 2, spinach and nitrate-rich vegetables. Now this one tends to surprise people, because when you think of spinach, you think of health, and you're absolutely right. Spinach is packed with iron, folate, fiber, antioxidants. It's one of the most nutrient-dense foods you can eat. So how could something so healthy become a concern? The answer lies in naturally occurring nitrates. Spinach and vegetables like kale, celery, and beets contain nitrates that are generally beneficial. In fact, they can support heart health and help regulate blood pressure. But here's what can happen after cooking. When spinach is cooked and then stored, natural processes, including bacterial activity, can begin converting nitrates into nitrites. The longer it sits, especially if not stored properly, the more this conversion can occur. When reheated, those nitrites can react with other compounds in the food and potentially form nitrosamines. Again, this is not immediate harm. This is about repeated exposure over time, and it's especially relevant for people who cook large batches of vegetables, reheat them multiple times, store them for extended periods. A smarter way to enjoy these foods. Here's the good news. You don't need to avoid these vegetables. In fact, I strongly encourage you to keep eating them. Just adjust how you handle them. Cook only what you plan to eat. If you have leftovers, store them promptly in the refrigerator. Consider eating leftover spinach cold, like in a salad or wrap, instead of reheating. Avoid reheating multiple times. This way, you preserve the benefits without increasing unnecessary risks. Let's pause for a moment. If you're still with me here, it tells me something important. You care about your health, and you're willing to look a little deeper than surface-level advice. And that matters, because most people don't hear this kind of information during routine doctor visits. Not because it isn't important, but because there simply isn't enough time. So let me ask you something. Which of these surprised you more so far? Processed meats or spinach? Take a second to think about it. That moment of awareness, that's where real change starts. And if you're finding this helpful, stay with me, because the next two categories are just as important, and one of them is something almost everyone uses daily without thinking twice. Food number 3, cooking oils, especially reheated oils. Let's talk about something that sits quietly in almost every kitchen, cooking oil. Whether it's vegetable oil, canola oil, corn oil, sunflower oil. These are widely used across the U.S. for frying, sautéing, and baking. And on the surface, they seem harmless. But oils, especially those high in polyunsaturated fats, are chemically sensitive to heat. When heated, they begin to undergo a process called oxidation. This leads to the formation of compounds such as aldehydes, lipid peroxides. These compounds can contribute to oxidative stress in the body when consumed in large or repeated amounts. Now here's where reheating comes into play. Each time oil is heated, its structure breaks down further. Its smoke point decreases. It becomes more unstable. And if oil is reused, or if food cooked in that oil is reheated, the process continues from where it left off. So instead of a fresh starting point, you're layering additional heat stress onto already degraded compounds. What this means in real life. Think about leftover French fries, fried chicken, takeout foods. When reheated, especially in a microwave, the heating can be uneven. Some parts get very hot, while others stay warm. This uneven heating can lead to localized areas of higher chemical breakdown. Again, we're not talking about a single meal causing harm. We're talking about patterns over time. Practical tips. Avoid reusing frying oil. Try to eat fried foods fresh rather than reheating. If reheating, use an oven instead of a microwave for more even heating. Consider incorporating more cooking methods like baking, steaming, or air frying. Small shifts, not extreme changes, can make a meaningful difference. We're going to pause here for part 1. In the next part, I'll walk you through the 4th food, one that's in millions of homes every single day, and explain a completely different type of risk that most people have never been told about. And more importantly, I'll tie everything together into a simple, realistic approach you can actually follow in your daily life, without stress, without fear, and without giving up the foods you enjoy. If you've made it this far, you're doing something incredibly valuable. You're not just eating for today, you're thinking about your long-term health, your independence, your energy, and your future quality of life. And that's what this conversation is really about. Not fear, not restriction, but understanding how small, everyday habits can either support your health or slowly work against it over time. Let's move into the 4th and final food. Food number 4, rice, a different kind of risk. Rice is one of the most widely consumed foods in the world, and here in the United States, it's a staple in millions of households. It's affordable, versatile, easy to prepare, and often cooked in large batches to save time during the week. And unlike the previous foods we discussed, the concern with reheated rice is not primarily about chemical carcinogens formed through heat. This one is about food safety, and something most people have never heard of. The hidden issue, a heat-resistant bacteria. Rice can naturally contain spores of a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. Now, before you panic, this bacterium is actually quite common in the environment. It can be found in soil, on plants, and in many raw foods. In small amounts, it's usually not a problem. Here's the key issue. The spores can survive the initial cooking process. So even after you boil rice, these spores may still be present, but inactive. Then comes the critical window. When cooked rice is left sitting at room temperature, on the counter, in a pot, or in a rice cooker set to warm, those spores can become active. They begin to multiply. And more importantly, they begin to produce toxins. Why reheating doesn't fix the problem? This is where many people misunderstand food safety. When you reheat rice, you may kill the bacteria, but the toxins they produced can remain. These toxins are heat stable, meaning they can survive microwaving, stovetop reheating, and even high temperatures. So the rice may look fine, it may smell fine, it may taste fine, but the harmful compounds are still there. Short-term versus long-term effects. In the short term, exposure to these toxins can cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal cramps. Most people recover within a day or two. But here's the deeper concern, and this is where we zoom out. Repeated exposure to low levels of bacterial toxins may contribute to chronic irritation of the gastrointestinal tract. And chronic inflammation, over many years, is one of the biological environments associated with increased risk for various gastrointestinal conditions. Again, not immediate danger, but long-term patterns matter. How to handle rice safely without giving it up. Rice is not the enemy. In fact, it can absolutely be part of a healthy, balanced diet. The key is how you handle it after cooking. Here's a simple, practical protocol. After cooking, cool rice quickly, within about 1 hour. Store it in the refrigerator promptly. Keep it for no more than 24 hours. Reheat it only once. Make sure it is steaming hot all the way through when reheated. And one more important point. Avoid leaving rice sitting out at room temperature for extended periods. That's where the real risk begins. If you're someone who cooks large batches for the week, consider making smaller portions more frequently. Yes, it takes a bit more time. But when you think about your long-term health, energy, and well-being, it's a worthwhile trade-off. Bringing it all together. Let's step back and look at the bigger picture. We've talked about 4 very different foods: processed meats, leafy greens like spinach, cooking oils and fried foods, rice. Each one has a different mechanism when reheated, but they all point to one common theme. How you handle food after it's cooked matters just as much as what you eat. Let's simplify this into something you can actually remember and use. The core principles. 1. Limit repeated high heat exposure, especially for foods that already contain sensitive compounds, like processed meats and oils. 2. Respect storage time. The longer food sits, the more its chemistry, and in some cases, its microbiology, can change. 3. Avoid multiple reheating cycles. Each cycle adds another layer of stress to the food. 4. Use temperature wisely. Even heating is better than extreme, uneven heat. 4 simple habit changes. If you take nothing else from this conversation, take this. Eat processed meats fresh. Avoid reheating them on high heat. Enjoy leafy greens freshly cooked, or eat leftovers cold instead of reheating. Don't reuse cooking oil and limit reheating fried foods. Cool and store rice properly and reheat it only once. That's it. Not a complete diet overhaul, not complicated rules, just 4 adjustments. Why this matters more as we age. Let me speak directly to something many people feel, but don't always say out loud. As we get older, things change. Energy levels aren't quite what they used to be. Recovery takes longer. Small health issues become bigger ones if ignored. And perhaps most importantly, there's a growing awareness of wanting to stay independent, to stay sharp, to stay active, to keep doing the things you love with the people you love. The truth is, long-term health isn't built on one big decision. It's built on hundreds of small ones. What you eat, how you prepare it, how you store it, week after week, year after year. And while no single habit guarantees disease or prevents it, patterns matter. Your future self is shaped by your current routine. A quick moment of reflection. Let me ask you something. Which of these 4 foods changed the way you think the most? Was it processed meats, spinach and vegetables, cooking oils, or rice? Take a moment and really think about it, because that answer tells you exactly where one small change could make the biggest impact in your life right now. Sharing this could help someone you care about. We all know someone who reheats the same leftovers multiple times, leaves rice sitting out overnight, uses the same cooking oil again and again, or microwaves processed meats every single morning. And they're not doing anything wrong intentionally. They're doing what they've always done, what they were never told to question. Sometimes, the most meaningful thing you can do is simply share information. Not to scare, not to criticize, but to help someone make a slightly better choice. A responsible perspective. Before we close, I want to be very clear about something. Everything we've discussed is based on established principles in food science, nutrition, and medical research. But health is complex. Cancer risk is influenced by many factors, including genetics, lifestyle, environment, overall diet patterns. So this is not about blaming any one food or habit. It's about stacking the odds in your favor, making informed decisions where you can, and reducing unnecessary risks without losing the joy of eating and living. If you have personal concerns about your diet or health, it's always best to speak with your own physician, someone who understands your full medical history. Final thoughts. You don't need a perfect diet. You don't need to fear your kitchen. But you do deserve to understand what's happening behind the scenes, so you can make choices that support your long-term health, your confidence, and your independence. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about food. It's about having the energy to enjoy your life, staying present for the people you love, maintaining your freedom as you age, and protecting your future self. If this conversation gave you something valuable, something you'll actually use this week, take a moment to engage with it. Like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because these are the conversations that often don't happen until it's too late. And if we haven't met before, I'm Dr. Sarah Johnson, and this is The Aging Truth. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.